worldwide, faith-based, community-driven streaming media. This is the Voice17104.com from the Allison Hill District of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Now broadcasting community radio from Studio A and community television from Studio B on the Voice17104.com.
Welcome, my brothers and sisters, to the Richard James Show on 17104, The Voice. I looked over Jordan, and what did I see? Coming for to carry me home, a band of angels coming after me, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child, a long way from my home, a long way from home. Ezekiel saw that wheel way up in the middle of the air. Ezekiel saw that wheel way in the middle of the air. Greetings, my friends. I might sound like I'm drinking the iced tea, and I am. It's a glorious day. God has given us another day. And I want to raise up today who I feel personally, and we've had a lot of great leaders that have fought in the struggle for freedom. I am raising up today whom I feel is the greatest leader of civil and human rights in our history, Paul Robeson. The greatest in history, Paul Robeson. I grew up in Annex Public Housing Project. I had a dad who created the definition of what a man should be. My father worked tirelessly with no education. He loved the political arena. He loved the civil rights struggle. And my father taught me that we, as men, that we should stand up and fight for what we believe in. And he would always talk about one individual that he felt was our greatest leader, and that's Paul Robeson. I took a look at his background. What made this man so great? Who is this man? Paul Robeson was born in 1898 in Princeton, New Jersey. And later, a little later, his father was a pastor, by the way, pastor of First Presbyterian Church. And Paul Robeson, a family moved from Princeton to Somerville. I'm very, very familiar with Somerville. This is all New Jersey, by the way. Because I worked as the deputy director of the Community Action Program many, many years ago in Somerville. And this can be an extremely difficult place to be. It's a large Black community with some really wonderful people in it. And then you got some folks that have some issues. But Paul Robeson grew up in this situation. What made him so great? Paul Robeson was indeed a genius. he applied and received a full scholarship to Rutgers University. And he played football while at Rutgers University and became an All-American football player. All-American football player. It's talking about talent, we're talking about skills, we're talking about who I feel was the greatest civil rights leader that we had of our time. Football, he excelled in that. Later, upon graduating from Rutgers, he attended Columbia University School of Law and became an attorney, okay? We're an All-American football player, and now we're a lawyer. We're an attorney. Paul Robeson believed that we are all equal, that we're all created equal. Yes, he fought very, very hard for his own people, African-American people, but he also felt that all people should be considered equal and treated in like fashion. He fought against the devil in the deep blue sea. He fought against what I call the devil in the deep blue sea of right-wing racism and capitalism. And for this, he paid a very, 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 very dear price. But he fought anyway, and he fought unmercifully. Later on, and you're going to hear that in some of these videos, Paul Robeson became a thespian, and he did some acting, and he got caught up in this whole thespian thing, and was involved in film after film after film, at a time when African Americans were not treated with equality or given the proper roles. Paul Robeson was treated with equality and did a great job. We're going to get right into it. I have several videos on the in-depth beliefs and life of Paul Robeson. One of the things that happened is that we had a committee, a racist, right-wing committee on un-American activities in the House of Representatives. And anyone, white or black, and especially if you're black, will be called a communist and will be destroyed by that committee. Paul Robeson was trying to do the thing that's right and was one of the most noted artists of his day, one of the most outstanding artists of his day, was smashed, and they tried to destroy him. And they certainly put scars on him because of his beliefs and because of his activities. But we're going to start off, we're going to take a listen to Paul Robeson's speech, or shall we say, testimony before the House Committee on Un-American Activities.
How is it that the American Negro, who for so long has been a second-class citizen in the United States...
Still is, I'm sorry.
Well, how is it that he's contributed so much to American culture?
Well...
Music, dance, everything you can think of.
Well, I have to be very modest about that. I would say certainly as we look at the African peoples in Nigeria, for example, I just got a wonderful invitation to go to Nigeria to be present at the installation at the Governor General Ezekwe, an old friend, who will now, and I had to cable him. I'm in Australia. I certainly would like to be with you, but I'm out here with some good folks. But I'll get to Nigeria later.
Mr. Robeson, do you feel that Africa is to some extent an affinity for it, a home, or do you still feel America is essentially your home? How do you feel?
Well, let me come here. I'll come to that in just a second. But to come back to it, so I would say the Africans and the American Negroes have turned out to be an extraordinarily gifted people. The great tragedy is that by not making us full-class citizens as yet in America, they may be losing, I don't know how much yet. And to come back, I would say that unquestionably, I am an American, born there. My father slaved there. Upon the backs of my people was developed the primary wealth of America, the primary wealth. You have to have accumulated wealth to start, you know, to build. You did it another way here in Australia. You had to build your accumulated wealth too. You just came and took it, you know what I mean? And that's what they did in most of the countries. That's what you Europeans did. You just took it. We got to catch up with you a little bit. And so in America. So there's a lot of America that belongs to me yet, you understand? But just like a Scottish American is proud of being from Scotland, I'm proud for being African. Now in our school books, they tried to tell me that all Africans were savages, till I got to London and found most of the Africans I knew were going to Oxford and Cambridge and doing very well, and learned their culture. And even once somebody had the temerity, after one had conquered the Chinese people and imposed upon them the opium trade and everything else, to suggest that they were a backward people, just the people who had been civilized so long over the rest of you folks didn't make any sense at all. So somewhere, it was wonderful to find about the colored peoples of the world that they were very advanced. So I would say today that I'm an American who is infinitely prouder to be of African descent, no question about it. No question about it. I'm an Afro-American, and I don't use the word American ever loosely again.
Now, this was the feeling.
That's right.
That when you were in London about 1937, 38, you really had the world at your feet then. I mean, you're a tremendous success. You were recognised all over the world, and yet you went back to America. This was the feeling that took you back?
I felt I had to go back to my people. That's right. The going was tough, and today I can go back. I just had my passport renewed. I could go back to pretty tough times now. But any time I could get a telegram next week that the Negro people had gathered somewhere in one of their conferences, as they could, and say, Paul, in the difficulties that are going on in America, would you come back and help us? I would take the plane as soon as I finished my engagements.
Okay, my apologies. I mentioned that we were going to do the House on Un-American Activity first, and that's not what I arranged. I arranged it for you to hear his comments on colonialism first. But anyway, you got a good view of where he stood, and you had a beautiful picture of him making that presentation. And let me just give you a little bit more background on the House on Un-American Activities. I think his name was McCarthy. This was a committee that went after particularly people in entertainment or in leadership, people who were forward-looking, people who did things for masses of the people, people who were out front in terms of the struggle. And Robeson was one of the greatest. As a matter of fact, part of what happened was there were other individuals that were put up to fight against Paul Robeson during this period. One of those was Roy Wilkins. Roy Wilkins was the president of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. I knew Roy Wilkins. He was a radical conservative. He was a horrible man. He was one of the worst civil rights leaders that ever existed. And I don't know if he was a planner, but he did more damage and more destruction. I started my whole history working in the NAACP, and which was the goodest, but we had to fight him rather than him joining and supporting us. So I'm not surprised that he went after Paul Robeson. But the House on Un-American Activity was appointed systematic, trying the destruction of leadership that is fighting for equality and justice in this country. So let's see his testimony, Paul Robeson, before the House on Un-American Activity.
I'll put the next one up here. Will you raise your right hand, please? You do solemnly swear in the matter now pending before this committee you'll tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I'm here, Senator. I've been traveling a good deal about the country on various missions. I'm an artist, a singer, also.
Excuse me.
We're helping.
Chris, this is the wrong video. House on Un-American Activity. This is the Senate presentation.
Yes, sir. Remember that one had the copyrighted material.
Oh, that's what happened. Excuse me, my audience. He's absolutely right. Okay, let's roll the Senate one. Okay, go ahead.
Singing for certain charitable organizations. And coming to the bill, I see first is to protect the United States against so-called American subversive activities. I presume, since the United States doesn't exist in abstraction, that it means the people of the United States. That would be more or less all right, wouldn't it?
I would think so.
I'll get back to other sections of the bill. It says in the section 2, the second paragraph, that in the question of the necessity for the legislation, that it's necessary to protect, to establish and set up the totalitarian dictatorship in any country results in the ruthless suppression of all opposition to the party in power. This is what I'm interested in, this complete subordination of the rights of individuals to the state, the denial of fundamental rights and liberties which are characteristic of a representative form of government, such as freedom of speech, the press, of assembly, of religious worship, and result in the maintenance of control over the people through fear, terrorism, and brutality. I've been all over the United States speaking and attempting to speak, and I have been experiencing in our own country today this very thing of control over the people through fear, terrorism, and brutality. This is happening in all parts of this land. Now, it seems to me, if we're protecting the people of the United States, that these protections are necessary from quite another point of view than I can see in their so-called necessity in this necessity.
Well, do you believe that they are
I'm saying these
entitled to protection even as provided
I just want to finish my point, and I also again want to say that it says that
he's the phone man. This man wasn't here. We let him into his place.
the complete subordination, in the same paragraph, complete subordination of the rights of individuals to the state, denial of fundamental rights and liberties, and so forth. I think that this is a complete, for example, definition, since our states are sovereign powers, so to speak, except for the rights delegated to the federal government, a complete description of, say, what happens to the Negro people today in Mississippi, Alabama, many other states of the Union. And the necessity for legislation, it seems to me, I will go into what I consider the constitutionality, denial of civil rights under this bill, in fact, to the whole question of the way we have placed this whole question in the bill. But it seems to me that the necessity for legislation that might concern, I suggest, with the committee today and for some time to come, that since in this bill, perhaps hundreds, thousands of Americans would like to speak on it, and that it should, that not only today, but perhaps in the future, there should be opportunity for that. I am tremendously interested, before approaching in detail this bill, just to ask you a question as to why, in the light of the terror that I've seen and the denial of rights, that the lynching bill is not sort of before the Senate at this time. It hasn't come out of the committee.
I couldn't answer that. I'm personally trying to get it out of the committee.
I think that that if there are any kind of activities that strike at the very basis of our democratic way of life, that this bill certainly should come out. Both parties have gone on record for the civil rights of the Negro people, and it looks as though you might get through without it. So I'm certainly hoping that this bill will come out, and perhaps even this bill could be put aside for the moment and extended later to see that these rights should be should be guaranteed. Now, as for a bill, I see it, the whole question of protecting the rights of the people of the United States, against the background, and the whole question of communism, for example, which is brought in every minute.
Robeson,
can I go on to my question? I'll answer that in just a second.
Are you a member of the public?
I will answer that in just a moment. Can I go on to my discussion?
Yes.
I will answer that. The whole background, I would say so, I would strike at the very root of the conception of what is in these first paragraphs. For example, the origin, the world movement with its origins and so forth. I mean, does Mr. Monk, or whoever framed the bill, understand that the origins of this kind of thing were in, say, the English Industrial Revolution and the time of Robert Owen, in the roots of the poverty of England, which was responsible for the English poor and indentured servants coming to build America itself. This didn't just spring up the other day in some part of Europe, a part of a whole struggle of human beings to improve their lot. One of the most important sections for myself being my own people here, the Negro people in America. So I see the whole framework of the bill, in reality, from my travels about this country and otherwise and about the world, in the framework of what we understand as Americans, and what we mean by our democratic ways of life here is expressed in this paragraph, that it means certainly from our own American history, from the beginning of our struggle for freedom from England, down through the Civil War which freed my own people, it means through the New Deal an extension. If we mean anything, we mean an extension of the democratic rights and full citizenship to people who do not yet have them. That would include not only 1/10 of the population, the Negro people, it would include, for example, many of the Spanish-American people that I saw in Pueblo, Colorado a few months ago, practically living in hovels under the ground. It would include many in the fruit fields of California, in the whole deep South and all over America. And so in approaching this whole problem of the struggle today in Europe and elsewhere, what has happened in 1917 in Russia, what's happened in Yugoslavia, many places, it has to do with trying, with millions and millions of people who are denied very basic rights, economic, social, and political, of trying to build a decent way of life. Against it have been many forces, the most important of which we joined hands against, the forces of fascism. Now, in going about America today, I say that when I was in Kansas City and I see the police beating workers over the head because they want a decent living, terrorizing the Negro people in West Virginia and all over, I say these are the essence of trying to actually stop the struggle of the people to get the democratic rights which they don't have. And I go so far as to say that I feel I've been in Mr. Munt's state in South Dakota. I was attacked by him once when I sang there. That in the whole discussion, and we can take it up in detail, of defining what is a communist party, what is a front organization, and what has happened in fact throughout America, where they have terrorized people from joining any kind of liberal struggle. Just a second. That this bill seems to me to have as its basic idea not to help the people of the United States or any other people, but to actually stop the struggle by terrorizing people to get rights for Negro people, for workers, and for other Americans who still haven't full citizenship.
You read the bill, Mr. Robeson?
I have read the bill.
All right. Now, Section 4, Paragraph 1. The certain acts that are prohibited are in Section 4. The other is merely registration.
No, but you can't dismiss the rest of the bill.
Well, I'm not dismissing it. I'm talking about that part.
Yes, okay.
Do you believe that it should be unlawful for anyone to attempt to establish in the United States a totalitarian dictatorship, the direction and control of which is to be vested in or exercised by or under the domination or control of any foreign government, foreign organization, or foreign individual?
We have laws to take care of.
But wait a minute.
Of course not. Sure not.
You think that should be the law?
Sure, that's all. We have laws to protect that. We have laws to protect that.
What is the law now?
We have plenty of laws to take care of any people who would attempt to overthrow this government.
No, but what is
Mr. Hoover can take care of that.
Wait. That's by force or violence, the Smith Act that you're talking about.
Okay.
Well, this isn't by force or violence. You could do it by other means.
What other means, then?
Well, penetration. You don't think that Yugoslavia wasn't taken over by the communists, do you, Mr. Robeson?
I certainly do not. I think the Yugoslav, as I say, this is very basic.
In Czechoslovakia?
By no means. Let's take Czechoslovakia.
Yeah.
Czechoslovakia. You can check this up. I happened to be in Czechoslovakia in 1945 singing to American troops at the very end of the war. I, as a singer, was called in by the American military to sing to some Czechs at a big party. And I had been in Prague before the war, and I speak the language a little bit. And I was trying to find out who these Czechs were. So finally, a woman comes up to me and said, "I'm Countess so-and-so and so, and I met you in Chicago during the war. I said you were in Chicago during the war, I understand. And I suppose you expected and it occurred to me that maybe she was back in Czechoslovakia to get back a couple of those castles, which had been taken away because those who owned the castles had helped the fascists. All I can say is, and I say this, and I can be called up again on this, I felt that I saw the American military, the only Czechs in the room happened to turn out to be Czech collaborationists and Sudeten Germans. And I would say that the Czech people probably made a decision that under no pressure, even American pressure, would they accept the restoration of Czech fascism, that if they were made to choose, they would choose the other way. That's the way I would suggest it. So and as far as Yugoslavia, it just seems to me, I was in Yugoslavia, and I saw the Yugoslav peasants suffering exactly like the Negro peasants suffered in the South. Only they weren't 1/10 of the population, they were perhaps 9/10 of the population. And so when we help them destroy fascism, including King Peter, whom we now seem to have in this country floating around, I know him as a boy there in London, saw him around there, I think that what has happened in Yugoslavia came from the struggles of the Yugoslav people who, with our help, were able to take the power. And as far as I can see, Senator, they're going to keep it.
All right. Mr. Robeson, what is an American communist?
You define that I consider an American communist. For example, I know one. He grew up with me. We came up together. He went to Amherst, I went to Rutgers. I was interested in that because Judge Stone, I took law at Columbia University. He was the dean of personal property at the time. He was an Amherst man, played football. We used to talk about this. Now, this fellow grew up with me, was born in Georgia, went through all sorts of, as a Negro boy, injustices and injury to his dignity every 5 minutes. He came north, went to Harvard Law School, and a dear friend of mine through all my life, still is. He is today on the city council of New York City, a man who is fighting and has made a tremendous struggle for the rights of the Negro people in Harlem and all through the United States. And I know no American that I'm prouder to know, and he is an American communist on the internet.
All right, now what do they stand for?
What's that?
What do they stand for?
They stand, as far as I can see, for complete equality of the Negro people in America, which I would like to see in every respect. It might interest me either to know, but in going about the country, I asked university students, when did they think that the Negro people would be completely free in America? Like anybody else, not special freedoms, economic, some kind of special freedoms. They said to me 1,000 years, 1,000 years. So I'm interested in a party and in people who like in the Scottsboro case, who risk their lives, who make every effort of any possible kind to see that the Negro people secure their rights, so the forces of labor.
Do you think that's what communism stands for in America?
It stands for me. Look, I say, that's my basic point, sir.
Well, that's what I want to
My basic point is, just wait a minute. Where did communism come from? I'm taking it from the first paragraph. It started against the background of the sufferings of the English people in the mills, in the great industrial revolution, which resulted in the slavery of white people in America. Now, in this struggle, can I say something? In this struggle, as I would put it, of the few against the many in history. That is, why did we found the American government? What happened? Why did Cromwell come over in England in 1640? Because he said no divine right of kings. And in order to see that in English history, they had to chop off Charles's head. And we had to have a revolution in 1776. We had to have a civil war to see that somewhere people begin to get their rights. So the French Revolution. So I see history as a struggle of the great mass of people to some way get some fair return for their labor and a decent chance to live.
Yes,
now this is what's going on in America, sir.
Yes, let's get down to what American communism.
What I'm saying, to me, they are a part of this whole struggle. The interest, so I can only define it against its background.
Right.
You can't say in one breath, Senator, that it's American communism, an offshoot of Russian communism.
Well, that's what I want to know.
I say, I know. What is
it under the domination?
I say, what is Russian communism an offshoot of? Did Marx or Lenin or did they spring up out of the head of a feeling? No. These came out of the social conditions of Europe. Now, and communism began in England, not in Russia. And let me say, so today,
are you an American communist?
Senator, just let me finish the point. I'll answer that question. Now, in Scandinavia today, they have decided to solve these problems of all the resources of the nation being in the hands of a few people by cooperative methods. That is, the General Electric, which controls electricity in this country, they more or less put them out of Sweden by cooperative means. In England today, they have taken over the railroads, coal, banks, by socialist means. That is, by public ownership. Now, this oughtn't be any mystery to the American people. We have TVA. New Zealand is a socialist country. This is a part of the struggle of people to get control of some of the wealth instead of leaving it in the hands of the few. I see communism as nothing but an extension of great public ownership of the main means of resources, like the railroad workers said the other day, and the coal mines. If they're that important, Senator, to the United States, that every time there's a national emergency, this is life or death to the American people, doesn't it occur to you that instead of beating the workers on the head, that maybe the government should own the railroads and the coal mines? Well, this is a whole struggle of which communism is a part. This is a part of the conceptions of the struggles of human beings for ages. And you can't move communism out anywhere in the world.
Well, then, do I understand?
So American communism is, you might as well say, what's an American socialist? What's an American Democrat?
American communism is part of the Russian system.
No, but do you know that American democratic principles stem directly from the French Revolution and our own revolution?
No doubt
They're very
about
revolutionary
that.
ideas.
No doubt about that.
They are very revolutionary ideas.
Right.
In fascist Greece today, these are very revolutionary.
Mr. Robeson, let's get down to some of the facts in the bill. Now, I asked you the question you said you'd answered. Are you an American communist?
Today, Senator Ferguson, that question has become the very basis of the struggle for American civil liberties. 19 or more, and many of the most some of the most brilliant and distinguished Americans are about to go to jail for failure to answer that question, and I'm going to join them if necessary. I refuse to answer the question.
You refuse to answer. You refuse to...
This is an invasion of my right of secret ballot, Senator Ferguson. If you want to know whether I am the Communist Party is a legal party, like the Democratic Party, Republican Party, I'm going to vote pretty soon. If you want to send some government official to take my ballot away, a secret ballot, my constitutional right, he can see just what I am.
I see. Have you a communist card in any communist organization, any state, Mr. Robeson?
That is, I consider, a part of the other question that I refuse to answer.
Yeah, I see.
And it's a party then that doesn't disclose it.
That's what I want to
Maybe
get
I'd say,
at.
I don't know, maybe if I were a Republican, maybe I wouldn't disclose it either. I would say, come to the ballot box and see it. I'm not just what the Republicans do. All I know, the Communist Party is a legal party in the United States, and making a magnificent struggle on many fronts.
I mean, communists just refuse to disclose whether they're members of it.
Well, I say since you've made, because today you have made this goes to the very heart of the bill. I say that this whole hysteria, and the bill is a part of that hysteria, to use this not only to break, not to hurt communists, but really to break the civil liberties of every section of the American people. The rights of labor, the rights of liberals. This is what I consider. This is a very basic.
You know something about the communists of America. You know something about the communists of America.
Many dear friends who are communists. It's perfectly true.
And you know.
I think they've done a magnificent job.
But you think they've done a magnificent job in America. That's your opinion.
That's my opinion.
And do you know that it is a fact that they, outside of their membership, decline to disclose that they are communists?
Well, I think that they might be, this can be determined. The Supreme Court's going to have to rule on that, I think.
But no, isn't that a fact? That except among themselves, they decline to make it public that they are communist or not communist?
I would say that if it weren't a basic problem of civil liberties that goes to the very heart of the struggle, in which the denial of these civil liberties, of which I believe this bill to be a part, that's the reason I'm here, this would not be so at all.
Have you ever been to Russia?
Oh, yes.
And have you studied in Russia?
Oh, no, never studied there. I went there as an artist.
You never attended any of the...
As far as that's concerned, you don't have to go to Russia to read Marx or Lenin.
No, I understand.
They didn't give it to me at Rutgers, incidentally, where I went to college, but I read it.
Yes, but you've read it since.
That's right.
You didn't study in any school in Russia?
No.
Do you know...
I went purely as an artist, and knew nothing about, when I first went in 1934, nothing about Russia. I went only to sing.
Do you know the head of the Communist Party in Russia, Mr. Stalin? Do you know...
No, I've never met him.
You've never met him?
I've seen him.
How much time have you spent in Russia?
I was there for over a period, say between 34 and 37. I was there 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 3 months. What is much more interesting, I should think, Senator, is that my boy went to school there for 2 or 3 years. My one boy.
Your boy?
Because I found in Russia a complete absence of race prejudice.
Yeah.
A complete absence.
What's the name?
The first time in my life, Senator, that I was able to walk the earth with complete dignity as a human being. So I took my boy there. He's now at Cornell.
Yes.
And let me tell you what happened to him.
What age was he?
He was 8 or 9 years old.
Well, he was
just a boy. Very important age, incidentally.
Yeah?
Very important.
What school did he attend?
He went to a school in Moscow, public school.
Yeah.
Now he's in Cornell. He's been back in America many years, went to high school. But in Russia, from not experiencing this race prejudice, today in America, he's going to fight for his people and fight in the progressive section of American life with much easier than I can, for example. Because if somebody would suddenly call me a name here in the room, don't think I would do anything about it. But I'm sure I'd have a tendency to get up and want to knock the guy down. Now he has no feeling of any kind of thing, because he knows that he lived in a part of the world where there was no such thing as color prejudice. So he's going to be able to make a very important contribution, I think, to American life. This is what it did for him. That's the reason he went.
Do you know whether or not the American communist owes any allegiance to the red flag?
As far as I know, the Supreme Court has been put up only once.
No,
they refused to pass on it.
No, I'm asking what you know. You've been traveling all over.
No, I don't know. Why would they? Why that? As far as I know, the American communist is interested in improving, as far as possible, certainly, the lot of the people here, of the people who suffer, as well as in other parts of the world where this becomes a part of the struggle.
Do you know whether or not the American communists believe in world revolution?
That I don't know.
You don't know that?
That I don't know.
And do you know whether they do believe in allegiance to the Communist Party or communism in Russia? Do you
know what?
That they owe allegiance to?
Oh, no. I don't think that. I would say no from anything I know about it. I don't think they have nearly as much allegiance to Russia as certain Americans seem to have today, say, to a fascist Greece, or to Turkey, or to Abdullah in Transjordania.
You have addressed communist meetings in America, have you?
President Roosevelt gave a definition of this, that of the concentration of power in a few hands in the struggle of the New Deal against the so-called economic royalists, in which he defined this concentration of power as the essence of fascism. I would like Mr. Hoover to be sure he's got Mr. DuPont tabbed and Forrestal and the people. This is very difficult because they are our government today. It isn't so easy to get to the basis of what might be potential American fascism. That's what frightens me. And I don't see enough about that in the bill.
Doesn't this bill cover
no, I don't
dictatorship, whether it be fascist or communist?
You cannot say that. You cannot define fascism or communism by totalitarian dictatorship. I disagree with this again is misleading the American people. That is, during the war.
What's your definition of fascist?
I would say, to me, the essence of fascism in two things. Let's take the more obvious one first. Racial superiority. The kind of racial superiority that led a Hitler to wipe out 6 million Jewish people, that can result any day in the lynching of Negro people in the South or other parts of America, the denial of their rights, the constant daily denial to any Negro in America, no matter how important, whoever it may be, of his essential human dignity, the thing which no other American would accept. This daily insult to his dignity as a human being. This is the essence of fascism. Now the second thing is, but the most important thing, which is the reason this can be, is the power of the resources of a nation in the hands of the few, and the use of the state power, as Hitler or Mussolini or the police in Kansas City, to beat down any attempt to strive toward any kind of democratic rights or freedoms.
Even though that be law enforcement?
What's that?
Even though it be law enforcement?
I say, even though I would say this is the very essence of the thing. We find always that law enforcement in this case is the protection of the property of the few people who are the potential of fascism.
Now, what is the essence of communism in America, in your opinion?
The essence, to my mind, of communism here, anyway, is every day I read in the paper, what does communism thrive on? All this kind of. You tell me, Senator, where would you expect to find a communist? Would you expect to find, say, that Mr. DuPont would be a communist?
Well, I think in America today we can expect to find them anywhere.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, I would say that...
I mean, it isn't a question of wealth.
Oh, very much so.
You think so?
Not a question. No, I'm talking about not a question of wealth in this case. Yeah. A question of wealth where it comes like an American today, as far as that's concerned, where in the end, take the South, well, you tell me who controls the wealth of the South.
See, you gave me...
No, hey, let me give you the point.
Well, wait a minute. You gave me the essence of fascism. Now I'd like to have the essence of, communism.
Let me give it to you, because this came from my experience. I didn't make these things up. So I'm in the South. My father was a slave. A few weeks ago, I'm standing in North Carolina on the very soil on which my father was a slave. Now then I go into the whole history of our civilization, so to speak. 100 million Negroes from Africa, torn to pieces and died in the slave trade. On our backs in America, the very primary wealth of America built on our backs. Cotton, taken to the New England textile mills. What do we get from it today? Poverty, insult, inferior station in life, no opportunities. Who controls the wealth? A few people. Now somewhere, to me, whatever today, by what? At certain times, like in our own history, these means have been revolutionary. In other times, evidently not. But somewhere to me, communism is interested in seeing that those people who are oppressed, who suffer, that somewhere they represent those people in their struggle toward the freedom.
Now that's the essence of communism.
That's what I'm saying.
And the essence of communism here is the same as the essence of communism in Russia.
I would say it's the same
universal
essence. It has to do with the struggles of the Russian people against the Tsar's oppression.
All right. It's universal.
They were interested. Exactly like universal in this sense, Senator Ferguson. You see, I must stop you from what is an American today. And here's what I mean, an American here. So you try to link every American who believes something with this country or that country. Now, Mr. Marshall is on record today that we are no longer Americans, Senator Ferguson. We are defending Western civilization, whether it's in Italy, Greece, even in Turkey. They've become the great defenders, strange to say, of Western civilization. Now we as Americans today are in a world, some kind of world struggle, which we are no longer Americans, we are a part of the world. So you can't isolate this in this sense. Now I say to Mr. Marshall, and I say as an American, I was in Europe. Now if there are Americans who want to support Franco in Spain, let them go ahead. I was in Republican Spain singing for troops who were fighting against Franco.
Mr.
You understand?
If this law
this has nothing to do. You can't do it. No, I don't see the American communist doesn't. He's an American as far as I know.
If this law
it's like
is passed...
In Jefferson's time, he was an American, not a Frenchman. That's what I see.
If this law is passed and the Supreme Court holds it constitutional, do you believe that it should be lived up to?
If this law is passed?
Yes. Or any law passed. And
well, I think this law, I sincerely hope the Senate will pass it, and I'm sincerely hope that the Supreme Court will declare it unconstitutional.
But if they do, you then believe that the people should live up to it?
Well, I'm sure that I would live up to it in every by trying in every possible way to have it taken off the books.
Well, but wouldn't you live under it? Wouldn't you say that it was the law and therefore it was binding upon you?
Nobody's arguing that point.
That's what I mean.
Nobody's arguing that point.
Well, Mr. Foster told us Friday that he would not obey it if it was
in what sense would he not obey it?
Just he wouldn't obey it.
What do you mean he wouldn't obey it?
Well, I don't know what his thinking was, but he said that he would not obey it. He didn't believe that it should be obeyed.
That he wouldn't register.
He wouldn't register.
Neither would I register.
Well, you would.
I read any organization, neither would I register.
And you'd be violating the law.
Well, then you would violate the law.
Then I would violate the law.
Oh, I see. Okay. So then you would violate the law, and you would feel that you were...
I would say, this to me, I would fight I would really fight it as a real piece of American fascism.
Well, you see, what I'm talking about is after it's declared constitutional by the Supreme Court, then you would defy it.
Let me put it this way, Senator. Let's suppose a Frenchman at a certain time is now faced with a law passed by Vichy. Would you expect that Frenchman to observe it?
Under the former Vichy government? No, it wouldn't be the law.
Why not?
Because
they were France at that period.
Yes.
They were the government of France.
There's a new government there now, and they have...
I'm not talking about at that time. Would you have expected those men who helped our American boys come up and destroy...
Well, is that the way you classify this law?
I would classify it exactly in that category.
I see. Then you would not...
As a fascist act.
Then you would not obey it.
That's right. As an anti-fascist, I would not obey it.
Now, you You recited here that your father was a slave.
That's right.
You are now independent.
Am I?
Independent. Well, now you wait till I get
The senator gets his question.
You are independent economically. You occupy a high position in American society. You're proud of it. You've been of service in many ways. Now, that's all been achieved in one generation. Can you think of any other country on the face of the earth where such an opportunity has been?
Yes.
What is it?
I would say that...
Russia?
Yes, I would say that not one...
Now, you don't mean to say that Russian people have any opportunity at all to be anything more than slaves, does it? You said a while ago, you approved of communism, approved of communism for the deed system.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
They've liberated the whole people. In many countries.
Liberated the whole people. They've liquidated them mostly.
No. Not nearly have they liquidated as many as the Negroes were liquidated in slavery or can be liquidated today in many parts of the South.
Well, now there's nobody being liquidated in America today.
Why do we have why should the lynching bill be on the calendar practically now? Anti-lynching bill.
Well, I don't know why it should be.
Why all this excitement about civil rights if they aren't necessary?
You have just heard testimony of Paul Robeson before the Senate in 1948. Thank God for Chris, because I confused the Senate with the House. But sometimes we have to be careful and not air things that are copyrighted to get us in trouble. We're free to air the Senate version, and you got an idea of the thought pattern of Paul Robeson: freedom, justice, and equality for everyone. The conservative right-wing Republicans were more concerned with whether or not he was a communist than whether or not his position represented American values of freedom, justice, and equality. That all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These folks forget all that. They're more concerned with their power and their control. They're more concerned with oppressing people of color and oppressing women than really carrying out the Constitution of the United States of America. We had other videos that we're going to show. We don't have a whole lot of time to show them, but let's just kind of talk about this whole thing with Paul Robeson. First of all, I think I mentioned to you that Paul Robeson was born in, I think it's 1898. He passed in 1076. That's the same year that I moved to the beautiful city of Seattle. That's when we lost one of America's greatest leaders. Again, I contend, and I put forth the theory that the greatest leader among all of our leaders, civil rights leaders, we had Martin Luther King, who was a doctor of theology. We had many others. Jim Formans, who was head of CORE. We had Whitney Young, who was head of the National Urban League. We've had many great and good leaders. We had good female leaders. Gloria Richardson from Cambridge was one of our female leaders. And by the way, Paul Robeson's wife was no joke. Lisa Robeson, she was a highly educated and very active person in the civil rights movement. And many of the things that Paul Robeson did, he did in conjunction with his beautiful, brilliant, and intelligent wife. And in terms of his whole career, one of the reasons Paul Robeson was such a great success in his career, at one point, one of the highest paid entertainers in the country, third highest paid entertainer in the country. And this is way back during the 40s and 50s. this man was one of the highest paid entertainers, and he was a black man. And one of the reasons for it was the managing ability, the negotiation ability of his wife. His wife was absolutely awesome. And she did a lot of things on her own. Remember, at one point, maybe you didn't know that Paul Robeson and his wife had their passports taken away from them for political reasons. They did not want Paul Robeson to travel the world spreading his news, because one of the things that Paul Robeson was very, very strongly against was colonialism. He hated colonialism, and he supported the decolonization of Africa. He had met people like Jomo Kenyatta. He and his wife met Jomo Kenyatta. Individual African leaders, and they know it. And in Ethiopia, for example, Ethiopia was attacked by the Italians, and the Ethiopians tried to take over Italy. Well, one of the places where Paul Robeson and his lovely wife and brilliant wife went was Ethiopia. So here we had a man who was not just concerned in targeting the problems of African Americans in this country. He was concerned about all people worldwide, and that just scared the devil out of many, 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 many people. One of the groups that he supported was the Welsh. Welsh miners were treated terribly in Welsh, South Welsh. And they marched and they raised up their banners in order to get their rights. And who supported them? Paul Robeson. Paul Robeson supported the Welsh and any people who were treated wrongly by government. And you remember that in 1884, the European nations had gotten together and divided the continent of Africa among themselves. One of the worst, the Belgians, for example, the Portuguese, the British, the French, all got together and divided Africa. And so African Americans had the worst deal of them all, because they not only robbed us of our land, they robbed us of our dignity. And one of the individual organizations that supported this was the white Christian church, who brought missionaries in Africa to try to teach their religion, and at the same time giving them the Bible, and they're taking the land. These slave masters, these colonials, all consider themselves Christians, and they probably were, but they certainly were also racist and bigots, and they were working to destroy the freedom, the justice, and equality of all people. And you had a black man who was probably the key spokesman for people in poverty, or for people in the United States, a man who was brilliant, tall, statuesque man, and a thespian, an actor. The play, The Emperor Jones, was one of the well-known plays during his day that he was the authority on. He played it and he did it, singing songs. Oh, my river, you keep on rolling. Yes, he sung. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child, a long way from home, a long way from home. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone, a long way from my home, sweet home, a long way from home. Paul Robeson, the greatest Basano that ever lived. the greatest, greatest civil rights leader. He wasn't plagued by infidelity. He wasn't plagued by dishonesty. We had problems and issues in some of our movements where some civil rights leaders had some problems with honesty, but he was a great man. We had some of the individuals who were involved in civil rights who did not support Paul Robeson, that was set up to attack him. One of them was a man by the name of Jackie Robinson. Jackie Robinson is my cousin, was a member of my family. He was a great man, and he was pressured and pushed to make some statements against Paul Robeson. And they tried to get Paul Robeson to retaliate, and he refused to do it. He would not take Jackie. Jackie was a great man. Jackie was one of the greatest ball players that ever lived, but also he withstood abuse, racism, and was treated as if he was less than human being. And so when the issues came up, and even some of the Black civil rights leaders came, as I said, came out, or people like Roy Wilkins, for example, came out with statements against Paul Robeson. Jackie said a few words and then he kind of backed off of it. And I think that he was ashamed and was embarrassed that he was pushed into doing that. But Paul lifted up Jackie and said, Jackie was a great man. And there's no question, just a great athlete, but a great man. Jackie and his brother, Matt Robeson, were beautiful and very great human beings. Paul Robeson has set a chart for others to follow, a chart in which he stood up and took the abuse. And his wife, Celicia, I think I'm mispronouncing her name, Robinson. I mean, she was no less than Paul Robinson. She was with one of the greatest civil rights men, and she helped to make it that way. And she was great in her own right. Many of those leaders got to know her directly because of her involvement in trying to fight bigotry and discrimination. So we owe so much to these folks. We were not able to use some of the videos that I would have liked to use just because of copyright infringement. And I really appreciate Chris keeping us honest on that. And there's some things that we have to be careful of. But you don't need me. You can go up on YouTube and look at some of those videos and listen to some of that wonderful music. You can get his whole gospel album on YouTube. You can go there and listen to there's a documentary on Paul Robeson, his life and his legacy. So go look at it. It's a wonderful documentary, a lot of information, and it's up. I looked at all of it, and I'm just sorry that we're not able to use it and comment on it. But at least you can do that, and get some really good information about one of our greatest leaders. He's gone, but his spirit is still with us, and we have some young, dynamic people that are following behind Paul Robeson. But we cannot forget our ancestors. Let's not forget those who came before. Let's not forget those who fought the battle. And let's not forget those people who were lynched and were treated as if they were less than human beings. So that is a fact. Just want to mention to you also, we're near the end of our broadcast, that we're still in business down to Lebanon Valley Market. We have, take a look, this is our stand. This is some of the wonderful things. We have statues, we have tall 4-foot giraffes, we have bulls, we have original paintings from Guinea-Bissau. Look at that beautiful tall giraffe. Come down and check us out. We need your support. We need your business. We also have African clothing, beautiful African clothing for men and for women. All this. Look at the jewelry. Come down and see us. We need your support. We cannot make it without you. Some people think that just saying that we support you is enough. It ain't. It's not enough, but it'd be good if you come down and make a purchase. You know, we got holidays coming up. We have birthdays that are constant. We have weddings that are constant. We have Christmas around, and we got some beautiful black Santa Claus, that we will be selling during Christmas. We also just got a whole a lot of beautiful, beautiful African drums. And for those folks who love those drum circles, hey, we can hook you up. We got some gorgeous drums that sound wonderful. And we even play a few drums from time to time there at the market. We also just got in some masks, some absolutely gorgeous, colorful masks that are very positive things. Some people are afraid of masks. They think it represents something pagan, but that is absolutely not true. We got some beautiful masks. So come down and at 35 South 8th Street in downtown Lebanon, and join us. Also at the market, we have it's a market, so they have produce, they have meat, they have steaks, they have chicken. I mean, you can find any kind of food. It's almost like going to the supermarket. And you also can sit down, and we also have sushi. You can also come down and you can sit down and eat your dinner. And on the 3rd floor of the market, there's a restaurant, sit-down restaurant where you can go and sit down. 2nd floor, we have the sushi restaurant, and we have tables where you can sit down and just enjoy yourself. So come to see us in Lebanon, and please support African Paradise. That keeps us on the air and keep us being able to throw the news out there. So hey, I'm going to say to you that I really appreciate you. I appreciate your coming and every week and lifting up the Richard James Show. Check out some of the other shows on 17104. They got some great hosts on this show, 17104, The Voice. Again, thank you very much. Much love to you. And until I see you again next week, so long from Richard James, your neighbor and your friend. Goodbye. Take care now.
Thank you again for tuning in to the Richard James Show. Our African and our African American programs are set up to educate you on what's going on in this world. We thank you for taking out the time to listen. Let's hear from you sometime also. So this is your neighbor and your friend signing off. Until I see you again next week and hear from you again next week. So long. God bless.